If you're thinking that the only path to retirement is working harder, saving more, and investing in the stock market till you hit 65, I invite you to the 10x Your Financial Freedom through real estate. I'm going to be going over my proven framework that I used to get to financial freedom at 41 in a few short years while working full time and raising young kids. And I know that you can do it even in the current market with interest rates the way they are, and even through a recession, because hundreds of our students, many of whom are busy physicians just like you, have used the same time tested strategies to acquire over $200 million of real estate. And on day 2 of the event, you get to meet some of them and hear their stories, how they got to 6 figures in passive income while saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes in this market. So if you're tired, burnt out, and ready to take back control of your time and income, if you're struggling with getting your first long-term, short-term rental, or investing in syndications and you don't want to learn from costly mistakes, or you feel like you don't have the time or money to get started, or if you're ready to go from a handful of rentals to 10xing your cash flow, we will be building your personalized recession-resilient real estate portfolio so you can accelerate financial freedom while paying less in taxes. So get ready to go from working harder to working smarter. Register for the event at generationalwealthmd.com/event in lowercase, and I'll see you soon. Hey guys, I am super excited about this podcast series. It's 2026, it's a new year, and I'm sure many of you have done your goal setting for the year. I like to do what we call visioning and dreaming, right? So I want you to envision, have a plan for what 2026 you want 2026 to look like, and write down all the dreams. We just went through this for our coaching program. Really plan out 2026 so you can have a breakthrough year. But whenever we do this, right, and if you notice, I've transitioned from saying, hey, let's set goals for 2026 to say, what are your big dreams for 2026, right? So it's a great time of the year to be doing that. But every time we do this, lately, what we start off with is taking a look at 2025 and really taking a look at what we can be grateful for in 2025, right? And it almost sets the stage for having a bigger vision for the new year and having bigger dreams. And so when I was doing this, and looking back at what my journey has been like, many of you know what my journey has been like. I went through a professional crisis. There was a merger at work in, it seems like it was so long ago, in 2019, following which I realized that it would take me 17 years to get to financial freedom. If I went down the traditional path, I needed things to shift. I shifted it in a year. I got to financial freedom using real estate at 41. And then the pandemic hit, and I was able to cut down to a day a week in medicine.
Welcome to Generational Wealth MD's podcast on financial freedom through investing in real estate. My name is Param Baladandapani. I'm a mom, radiologist, real estate investor, and mentor to others looking to start or scale their real estate portfolios. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with inspiration, strategies, and insight so that you can stop trading your time for money and live life on your terms. If you love the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
That was the focal point that really made me build a Generational Wealth MD community, because that became my mission. And 2025 was a year I was super grateful for, because, I built financial freedom for my family with the intention that it would get us through these crises that kept happening, right? And it will happen to all of us. 2025 was another year where unexpected things happened. A lot of family health crisis, with half our family, more than half our family, halfway across the globe in India. It actually is something I'm super grateful for, because it allowed us to move halfway across the globe to be able to be with family, which is what financial freedom really means, right? It's geographic freedom. We made the decision to homeschool the kids, pull them out of school, and move back to India to help take care of family. I am super grateful for the freedom that our finances have allowed us. And as I was reflecting, that came up for me a lot. But 2026 hit, and we're not even a month into 2026 as I'm recording this. But I have had one of my high school friends, who was a single mom, pass away, leaving behind a young son. I have had a dear friend diagnosed with metastatic cancer. And I have had another friend who met with a devastating motor vehicle accident. And all of this happened in January 2026. And so as I'm recording this, as I wake up every morning, I it just reminds me, highlights the importance of our mission, which is to help everyone, right? It's to help everyone really break barriers, change the way people invest, so that financial freedom and autonomy becomes something that all of us can enjoy. So when these crises hit, right, whatever that may be, and we all will have our fair share, you are in a position to really make choices that aren't dictated by your income, right? And that's the point behind everything I do. It is to focus on how we can grow tax efficient passive income through asset allocation, through diversification, and that's why I'm super psyched to be doing this series where we're going to be talking about the 2026 Wealth Playbook, right? It's about how you can build freedom in uncertain times, because I'm sure a lot of you are sitting there thinking you missed out on the best years of real estate investing. I've heard this over and over again, right? And I talk to friends who aren't, who are just sticking to the traditional model, and they will say, well, yes, that happened because you invested 10 years ago and that was the best time to be investing. And, honestly, that's not true. 2026 is a year where interest rates are going to be volatile. It's a year where economic policy, where government policy is shifting. There will be tariff uncertainty. The fundamentals are shifting, but there are outsized returns if you know where to be looking. The thing is, though, 2026 is not going to reward last year's strategy, right? At this point, when combined with my direct ownership portfolio in GW Capital, in partnership, I own over 2,000 units. And I currently co-manage a portfolio worth over half a billion. And we all know, everyone in this space knows that 2026 is not like the past. It's not a continuation year. It's what we call a reset year, right? And I want this podcast series to be for those of you who are really thinking about making 2026 your breakthrough year. I want this series to be about us taking a look at the big picture economic forces and translating that to real decision making, right? And so your decisions for investing this year aren't going to be based on headlines. They're going to be based on clarity, right? Breaking this into three parts. The first part today, we're going to be talking about success stories. Like I said, when I do my goal setting, when we do visioning, I want you to always start off with what really happened in the past that you're grateful for, right? And that's what we're going to do over here. Today, we're going to talk about success stories, right? What shifted in 2025? Because 2025 did have a lot of turmoil, and how physicians, doctors like you really came out successful even in 2025, what worked for them. And then the next part of this series, we'll talk about what to expect in 2026 and where the real returns are hiding in 2026. And the third part of the series, I'm going to go into the rules for strategic investing in 2026 and why growth at all costs, like we did in the past, that's just not going to work, and how you can stay protected and opportunistic. Okay. So with that being said, let's talk about, like deep dive into what we're going to talk about today, which is success stories in 2025. There was chaos in 2025. If you guys remember, sometimes I forget that 2025 was the year that, President Trump brought back 100% bonus depreciation, right? A few great months, and you forget that we started the year at 40% bonus depreciation. So a lot of those massive tax savings that doctors have been using to shelter their clinical income from taxes, a lot of that happened because of shifts that happened in 2025. But there was a lot of chaos, right? Rates were swinging. There was a lot of volatility in the market, especially because of trade and tariff policies. There was a new presidency, right? And the stock market, it delivered uneven returns. Real estate, some people struggled, and some did really, really well. And so throughout 2025, I've seen our students within our coaching program and our investors with GW Capital just create massive cash flow and more tax savings than ever. If I had to pick out stories, one of our doctors in the CGF Creating Generational Freedom coaching program in 2025, and he started in September 2025, he went from owning no short-term rentals to closing on 2 short-term rentals within a span of a few months and sheltering over $300,000 of his W-2 income from taxes, right? We've had doctors within the program shelter up to $800,000 of clinical income from taxes in 1 year just because of acquiring one or two properties, right? And our students continue to do that in 2025. With everything that was happening, that happened in 2025. Within our mastery program, which is our higher level program for people who've actually been through our program, we had a couple who they had two kids under the age of 5 years who generated over 40,000 a month in cash flow from their short-term rentals, right? This is tax-free cash flow from their short-term rentals as they're getting these massive tax savings. So they had over 500,000 in gross revenue from a few short-term rentals with hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax savings, right? And we were doing our mastery goal setting webinar last week, and they've set a goal this year of getting to $1 million in tax-free cash flow, in tax-free gross revenue from their portfolio, right? And so that's happening. That happened in 2025. That's what people in the community are setting as goals for 2026. When I say this, right, whenever we do our goal setting webinars, what I notice is that oftentimes people come back to me later and say, I came in thinking I was going to do this, and then I heard everyone talk about what their goals are and what they've achieved, and I just decided that I could dream bigger, and that's why I'm sharing these stories, right? If people were able to do this in 2025 with everything that happened, with the chaos that was there in 2025, I want you to know that this is possible, right? There are strategies, and I want to inspire you to dream big as you're thinking about 2026, right? Moving on to GW Capital, we've had investors. So we had one busy specialist who still practices generate six figures in tax sheltered passive income, right? GW Capital is where you're completely passive. You do a couple of hours of due diligence on the opportunity, you wire your funds in, and then you get monthly cash flow hitting your bank account, right? So this is just pure cash flow hitting his bank account with him really not being involved with tenants, toilets, no headaches, right? So passive income. So this specialist, this radiologist, built six figures in tax-free income, tax-sheltered income that hits his bank account passively, right? And this is something. How do you do that? And with about a third of the investment would have taken to get that in the stock market in terms of cash flow, if you were to do it with significantly lower risk, right? And so, for those of you looking at passive investment opportunities, right, and you're looking at passive real estate opportunities, I just wanted you to see how it's still possible for you to tap into the tax efficiencies of real estate, get really high cash flow. And that's the point over here, right? Sometimes you'll hear about how, with passive real estate investments, it's really not adding to my passive income. That's not true, right? We're still seeing opportunities. This was last year. The same opportunity extends into this year. We still have it where you're getting 8% cash flow day one, right? Hitting your bank account, tax free, and with a 3 times return on capital, right? 3x multiple over 7 years, 120% tax losses, right? That you could use if you wanted to, you could use it right away, right? And so we're still seeing opportunities like this on the passive side. And if you want to explore that, go to gwcapital.com, capital with an A, and click on our current opportunities. Take a look at what's available, right? And this is what we're seeing at this point. We have opportunities like this in this market. We've had them in 2025, and our investors have been able to generate six figures in tax-free cash flow. And so all of that happened in 2025. We had another couple who scaled to 150 units in partnership, acquiring multifamily units, right? That happened in 2025. And so what I want, and the reason I'm mentioning all of this, right? So this is happening within our coaching program, within our high tier mastery membership, with our investors in GW Capital, right? Our coaches have done this. These are physicians like you who have kids, who have little kids, young kids, right? Who have full-time jobs that are demanding, who have, some of them have really no knowledge, who started off with no knowledge in 2025 of how to invest in a short-term rental or even how to invest in syndications, right? Who are still able to get these results. So if you're sitting on the sidelines thinking, well, yes, it's possible, but it's possible for people who have the knowledge or who've been doing this for a while or who don't have young kids or who aren't working full-time jobs. I just want you to see that it's possible for all of those people, right? The physician I mentioned who went from who acquired two short-term rentals, he had zero short-term rentals at the beginning of the year. I talked about someone who invested passively, right? When you're investing passively, you don't have to do the heavy lifting. We do that in GW Capital. We vet the deals for you. We bring these opportunities to for you. We de-risk the opportunities, and you still get to do your own due diligence, and we educate you on how to do that. You know, these are people who are just as busy as you are, who are, some of them are starting from scratch, who are still getting these results, and they got these results in 2025. And that's what I want you to think about as you think about your plans for 2026, right? I don't want you, we're the average of the five people we surround ourselves with. And I don't want you to listen to headlines. I don't want you to listen to your neighbor who's never invested in real estate investing. I want you to hear stories of how sophisticated investors are continuing to do this in today's market.
If you're interested in learning how to invest in long-term and short-term rentals the right way, so you can accelerate to financial independence with the support of mentorship, community, and vetted investor agents in strong markets across the country, then get on the waitlist for the next cohort of Creating Generational Freedom at www.generationalwealthmd.com. You don't have to learn from decades of costly mistakes by yourself. The program is only open for enrollment in the spring and fall each year. In the last 6 months alone, our members have acquired over $60 million of real estate, and more importantly, they're living life and practicing medicine on their terms. You don't have to do it alone.
If I had to zoom out and say, okay, what did these people do that was different from what everybody else did, right? What is the investor who's winning, who's generating six figures in cash flow, that's tax-free, who's generating multiple six figures in tax losses they can use to shelter their W-2 income, who's scaling to 150 units, right? What are they doing that's different from others? I came up with three things, right? And remember, we're going to talk about 2026, what the market looks like, what your rules should be for investing in the second and the third part of this series. But if I just take a look at these people who did this successfully in 2025, what stood out for me was the fact that they stopped chasing shiny objects, right? They had a simplified strategy, highlighting the word simplified, that this is not complex, right? But it's a simplified strategy, which is proven, right? And they were able to seek hidden opportunities. And if I had to give you three pointers, right, as you start thinking about 2026, and I'm going to talk about 5 rules that really work well in 2026. But what did these people do that was different? The first thing was they had a cash flow strategy, right? And so don't chase shiny objects. Cash flow is key, right? Within the coaching program, we've seen our students stress test short-term rentals, right? And we help you do this. I mean, you don't have to really even know how to do it, but all our students stress test these deals to make sure that they will cash flow no matter what happens with the economy, right? Once you acquire it, how do you optimize your listings so that even if someone else isn't doing well in that submarket because of the economy, because of macroeconomic trends, you still know how to stay on top of your game, right? Listing optimization, that was crucial for people who own short-term rentals. Not everyone can list a property on Airbnb and still have high occupancy numbers, right? And so all of this is really, really crucial, which is where education comes in, right? When you know what you're doing, then you know how to tap into these opportunities, and there is strategy and method to all of this. In GW Capital, which is the passive investing side of our community, I talked about how we still have opportunities where you're getting 8% cash flow day one, right? That's still happening in this economy. We acquired a lot of opportunities last year where we assumed the seller's loan, right? Loan assumptions. This allows you to still cash flow. We reduced expenses significantly. And all of you know that 2025, when everybody else was complaining about or was affected by property taxes increasing massively, insurance costs and increasing massively across multiple markets, we were still able to find cash flowing opportunities because we were significantly able to reduce expenses and get into properties with really low interest rates, sometimes even 3%, even though the interest rate environment was where it is. And a lot of that really helped us to cash flow, right? Even within our passive investment opportunities. And so if you're looking for opportunities that are safe, that's what you want to look at, right? Within with our students in the community who scaled and acquired hundreds of units of multifamily, there were markets where you could still do that and still have cash flowing assets, right? And so one important part of that strategy, which is why people were so successful, is really and still able to generate six figures in passive income in that market was having a strategy that cash flow, right? And that's going to be critical. And so if you are someone who's struggling to find that, then you have to go to gwcapital.com to look at our passive opportunities, any current opportunities, and join us. Go to generationalwealthmd.com/event in lowercase and join us. This is where we have 3 days. I go live. I deep dive into strategy in a way that's not possible in these podcasts, but it's possible, right? And so you have to look for hidden opportunities and have a strategy that works, that is cash flow positive. Now, the second one is controlling the things that you can control. And this is why I love real estate, which is why it's so different from the stock market. If you are attempting to reduce risk in your portfolio, which all of you should think about, right? It's never just about the returns, it's also about the risk. If you're attempting to reduce risk in your portfolio, then you want to take charge of the things that you can. And the stock market is not in your control, right? Real estate, market prices are not in your control, but there are so many variables that are in your control. Tax efficiencies, you can tap into that. That's completely up to you. Debt pay down, that's something that you can get in any market cycle, right? Something we call this forced appreciation, right? You can increase the value of a property. It increases organically with the market going up, and that's something you don't control. But there are ways in real estate, right? And this is the best part about real estate, where you can really add value to a property outside of what's happening in the market cycle, right? And that's the best part of investing in real estate. There are so many things that you can control while lowering risk in your portfolio. That's something you cannot do in the stock market, right? And so, like I mentioned, I've talked to you about how our investors in our syndications in GW Capital and our students who invested in short-term rentals, right? They tapped into tax efficiencies, and that's happening in every market cycle. Debt pay down is happening in every market cycle. Eliminating variables, right? This is something that you can control. Getting into deals where the debt is really, really safe, that's something you have absolute control over. We did due diligence on oil and gas opportunities, and we almost closed. We were getting really close to partnering to get one of those opportunities because of the massive tax benefits on the active side. But again, there are variables over there that you really cannot completely have control over and eliminate. And so we stepped back, right? You can always build a portfolio strategy that eliminates risk by eliminating variables, right? And that's something that you have control over. The game in 2025 shifted from what I said, forced appreciation. In the past, you could go in, you would rehab a property, which we've called the BRRRR strategy. I've talked about this. The BRRRR strategy allowed you to increase a property's value without waiting for market appreciation to happen. And that's what we've done traditionally. 2025 was not one of those years, right? 2025 was the year of the creative value add, right? I like to call it creative value add, which we've done across the board. Our students do that with short-term rentals, with multifamily. We've done that in GW Capital, where it was almost called the year of the operator, and I feel like that's going to continue in 2026, where operational efficiencies allow you to really, that's where you have that creative value add, right? We have an opportunity right now, and many of you are part of that, where we're saving $400,000 in expenses every year, which bumps up the property value, which adds about 8 million in equity to the property, right? And that's how commercial real estate is valued, right? We did many opportunities in 2025 where we had property tax exemptions. That increases your net operating income. That increases your bottom line, increasing the asset value, because commercial real estate is valued based on the income the property generates, right? We were able to go in, and we're still in a part of the market cycle, right? With all the chaos that happened in 2025, we're in a part of the market cycle where we're able to buy these discounted buys. Multifamily commercial real estate, in a lot of markets, assets are valued 15 to 30% lower than they were at the peak of the market cycle in March 2022, right? So there are so many things you can control in real estate, which is why you're able to bump up value, really control your returns, which is why, and you've heard me say this, in one year, some of our students are able to get over 200% ROI in the opportunities they go into. So if you're they buy a short-term rental to make it easy for $1 million, put down $100,000 because you can put down 10% on a short-term rental, and they get, between tax savings, right? Like between dollars returned from, tax dollars that, the tax refunds they get, cash flow, and increasing the value of the property and debt pay down, they can sometimes get 200% ROI on that 100K investment in 1 year. And that happened in 2025, right? It continued to happen in 2025. And that's what I want you to think about as you think about 2026. And so really, don't get paralyzed by what you're hearing in the headlines. It is possible to generate momentum. And like I said, what was different about what these physician stories that I'm sharing with you, right? What was different about what these people did? They had a cash flow strategy. They controlled risk, right? They took that into their own hands. And they controlled risk and returns, right, in their portfolio. And then they were surrounded by community. All the stories I told you were of people who avoided common pitfalls and learned how to scale efficiently in a market where others were struggling, right? And people did struggle in 2025, right? But these are stories of people who, avoided those pitfalls because they had community, because they had momentum, because they had mentorship. And if I had to pick the top 3 things that these people did differently in 2025, that's what it is. Now, there were a lot of people who stayed on the sidelines. In times of volatility, it's very easy to say, I'm going to wait, right? And those who waited in 2025, they lost ground, right? Those who actually, took action, saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, used that to build generational wealth. And 2026 will reward action even more. And if you want to learn about these strategies in depth, I'm going to be talking about them in the next 2 episodes. We'll talk about market insights. We'll talk about strategies, the 5 rules that you should really focus on in 2026 if you want to lower risk in your portfolio while increasing your passive income and getting those tax savings. You don't want to miss those 2 episodes. But we're also doing a deep dive in March. This is our biannual event where we have thousands of doctors who hop on and we talk about how you, even if you don't have time, don't have a lot of capital, don't know anything about real estate investing, or you're someone who owns multiple properties and you're looking to scale in 2026, right? Wherever you are, I'll show you our exact strategy, how you can build meaningful passive income, even in the uncertainty that 2026 brings. What frameworks these students have used, I'll walk you through that. So make sure you join us, sign up. It's generationalwealthmd.com/event in lowercase. That's if you're starting, if you're looking to scale, that's an event you don't want to miss. So join us over there. We'll have some of these doctors join us and they will share their stories, right? So you don't want to miss it. But what I want you to take away from this episode is that if you start now, right, and we're at the beginning of 2026, if you start now, here's what 2026 can look like for you realistically, right? 6 figures in passive income that you're getting in your bank account that is tax-free, even when you're traveling the world, right? You could be traveling the world, you could be doing whatever you want to, and that still hits your bank account. Hundreds of thousands of dollars saved in taxes that goes towards building generational wealth for your family instead of going to the tax man. And true time freedom, geographic freedom, and autonomy so you can do the things that matter most without having to wait decades to be able to make those choices, right? So I shared examples of how I've been through multiple crises over the last 5 years. And it's like, I don't think any of us are going to be spared major upheavals, right? Life will throw us curveballs. And I don't want you to wait till crisis hits you to start shifting and planning. I want 2026 to be your breakthrough year. And I want to show you how to control your returns in real estate in 2026 and not, buy into speculation. I want you to have clarity over headlines. And that is why episode 2 of this podcast series, we're going to talk about what to expect in 2026, market insights, and where the real returns are hiding. And then part 3 is going to be why growth at all costs is not going to work in 2026 and how sophisticated investors are shifting strategies to stay both protected while being opportunistic. Okay, so I'm super, super excited. Make sure you sign up for the 10X event. That's generationalwealthmd.com/event. If you're looking for passive investment opportunities, go to gwcapital.com and take a look at our current opportunity. But I am super excited to deep dive into part 2 and part 3 of this podcast series. So don't forget to join me.